there's this magic window that we can create for women, for girls through this sport that is bigger than just whether or not they want to play it, right? Like when you take some area in the world that's always been off limits.
Welcome to Sponsorable, a podcast that brings together sports organizers and brand leaders to talk about the business of grassroots sports. Hi, I'm Garrett Shea, and I've spent the last 20 years in the youth sports industry, where I've built nationally televised sporting events and corporate sponsorship programs. I created this podcast to bring in experts from across the sports industry and have them share what they do in the space and how they do it. My guest today is going to talk about breaking barriers in sport as the first female NFL coach. Later in the episode, she will be talking about the psychology of sport and the importance of coaching and parenting to keep kids in sport. Please welcome Dr. Jen Welter. Jen, hey, thanks so much for joining us today. It's great to see you again. It's been too long since we've had a chance to connect, kind of face to face, video to video. But I still remember back in 2013, I was at USA Football building and running their national team program, and there you were representing the United States in women's tackle football for Team USA, going overseas to win a gold medal. That must have been quite the experience.
You know, I will say, as a woman who grew up loving the game of football and started playing when there was really no North Star, right? It didn't exist when I started playing that you could possibly throw on the red, white, and blue and go rep the US as a woman. And to have been able to play and win gold medals in both 2010 and 13, some of the best memories of my life and some of the people I will hold, dear to my heart for the rest of my life. And, you talked about 13. I still go back to that 2010 team. And we did a big shout out for 2010 in the Kick Glass Women in History Museum that I curated. The most dominant. Most people don't know this. And I swear to you, Garrett, I will get a documentary done on that team. The most dominant football team of any gender ever fielded over 3 games. We beat the world 201-0.
Wow. Now I'm gonna because the years run together, so I don't recall as well. But where was your training camp in 2010 versus 2000? Do you remember where training camp was?
Absolutely, I do. 2010, we were in Round Rock, Texas.
Okay.
It was.
Then that was the one. I think that was the one I was at. Was that?
I'm pretty sure that's the one you were at, because that was the Texas summer.
Yes.
Forget 2-a-days. We were 3-a-days. And the field was so dry because of the Texas heat that we couldn't even wear cleats on it because you would just skate across it. So we called our field the Rock. And, we're going to play the world and there's no film, right? Like, I've coached, and like half of football, or maybe even more, is the breakdown of your opponents. And we know nothing, right? Like, we have no idea who we're going to play. We don't know who the powerhouses are. There's zero film. Like, our coaches, Coach Stone, Konecki, and Mac, right? Still dear friends of mine to this day. We actually went to Australia together. They were showing us like the Rocky movie, right? Because like we didn't know we were fighting. It's like, he's not a machine, Rocky. And this group of 45 women with our managers, Tanya Bryant, Dawn Burnt, and, those 3 coaches, we pulled together in a way that I think all of us in our lifetime crave for that feeling. You know, just
I still remember showing, I had a chance to play college football at Ohio State and Rutgers. And so I came up in a football family, but I had never seen female tackle football. And when I showed up to that training camp, and I was like, holy cow, like these athletes are tremendous. And they like you guys embodied the football mentality. I mean, obviously great athletes across the board. And that was one of the most interesting things is as I was talking to the female athletes and just kind of inquisitive, like, how did you get into playing tackle football? Because it's not offered, right? It's like, where in the world do you learn these skills about contact and physicality? And I mean, to your point, I mean, watching those practices and training camp and then watching you guys play in the world champion, it was pure domination. It was fantastic to watch. Yeah, and you guys all came from like, how did you get into tackle football? Obviously, you're a great athlete. What sports did you play kind of growing up?
So growing up, I kind of played everything. My first major sport was tennis. I was ranked up to, I think 50 was my highest rank in Florida, which we used to joke, which meant like, 60 in the country. We were so humble about our playing ability in Florida, but it was true. And I used to get coached by Marty Fish's dad. So Marty was a couple years younger than me, and I used to get to play against him. I mean, just a great community. But being that I am 5'2", so most people don't realize that. Like for some reason, and maybe it was Madden, because in Madden I was like 6'10", because it was the same height as all the guys. It's hilarious, right? Go back and watch it. But I'm only 5'2", and in tennis, my coach was basically like, you probably never going to be big enough for this sport. And as a youth sport athlete, that moment in my career is probably the reason why I have a PhD in sports psychology to this day, because I was devastated, right? Like height is something like that you can't really outwork. And so it was like, wait, this thing that I'm traveling every weekend, I'm playing tournaments and I'm giving up a social life and I'm spending all my time with adults is just not possible, right? Like, and I don't think we should ever say that to kids, right? Like, is to set goals for them and show them, like, you can't change your height, but here you could get, faster. Um, and then I made the switch into team sports, and I really found myself there because in a team sports environment, you know, you don't have to be all of the answers in and of yourself. You have to be a great element to a bigger picture. And, in tennis, it was just me versus the world. And going from me versus you to us versus everyone was really where I think I found myself as an athlete and hopefully bigger picture as a human. So I played, softball, soccer, volleyball, ended up hiding out also. But then in college, I played rugby. And, that was really the defining game for me. Um, when I saw it, I went to Boston College, ended up playing all 4 years there. And it was this moment of like, wait a minute, what is this magical game? Why do they throw the ball backwards? And yes, I get to tackle. And I really had no idea what I was doing, but ended up playing all 4 years for Boston College, getting recruited to the under 23 national team, um, not making it because of my size. Again, being pretty crushed, because you think you make it to that pinnacle of a sport. You're an athlete, you've dedicated all this time, and then you're just not enough. Um, and then found myself playing flag football on weekends and got recruited from that league to the Mass Mutiny, which would, for those of you who follow women's tackle football, would be the present day Boston Renegades. Um, and I went to an open tryout there and made it. Um, but it's definitely not a straight line for women, or at least it wasn't back then. I mean, I think flag football now has really changed that narrative, but for those of us as women who put the pads on back then, we were all coming from another sport.
Sure. I mean, and I mean, perfect timing on your side because obviously in today's tackle football world, the influence that rugby is continues to have is tremendous. And so being able to, obviously develop those skills in rugby, especially tackling skills, and then I'm sure that really helped you as a coach and to teach, to teach the proper tackling. I got to believe that you have one of the most unique skill sets, not only your experience, but then also, that sets you up really well to go into the coaching world.
Oh, for sure. And I still, I was always a rugby style tackler. I tell people, in my early days of playing, I used to get yelled at. And I was like, but I don't miss tackle and I'm not changing, right? Like I could tackle anyone with no pads and no helmet, which, sometimes at practice they get a little bit mad at me, but like I don't have that same fear because I am so conscious about face and head placement. And Garrett, you'll love this. At any camp I go to this day, I'm like, I will teach tackling, whether it's a kids camp or we're going here. I will teach tackling because I can promise you I will have an impact. And I know I can fix anybody's tackling mechanism by having them do like the 3-step drop drill with me because I can see like, are you leaving your junk in the trunk? Is your face in the wrong place? Like all these things. And especially for boys, like I always joke with them, I'm like, listen, I can tackle you and never even mess up this face. Like this face will be in makeup and it will be flawless when I finish. And they're like, what? And I'm like, oh yeah, face has no place in a tackle. And, so they always get a good kick out of it. But I mean, I've taught tackling here around the States. I always advocate for being it anywhere I am. And then, I've done it in Mexico, I've done it in other countries. And every time, it's the same fundamentals because it's fixable and it's something that you can absolutely feel when you're doing it wrong.
Sure. I mean, one of the great kind of movements that I've seen is it used to be probably when we were younger and playing, you only taught tackling in pads. And now, I mean, man, tackling drills and technique is taught probably more so without pads, to your point, because it is a skill and technique and about placement and footwork. And it's not about sheer like, hey, put your head, put your head into them and find the ball. It definitely has evolved, which is great. And I'm sure it's those influences like you referenced in rugby that have allowed us to evolve our the way we teach it.
100% cheek to cheek, hips are up and drop all day.
Yeah. And and so you had a great playing career in the world of tackle football. Um, you know, but at some point, your career ends, and then what do you how do you kind of progress and where do you go after your tackle football career ends?
Garrett, if you ask any of the women in tackle football, they will tell you Welter never retired. She got stolen. I think that there are still women that are a little bitter about the men's game for taking me away maybe too early because I was in the prime of my career. And, I'm sure you remember this when I played in men's tackle football. So, I never just said, I'm hanging up the cleats. I'm not, physically able. I played a season for the Texas Revolution, which was in the Indoor Football League as the first, and as far as I know, only non kicker to have done it to this day. And, it wasn't a play, it wasn't a day, it was an entire season. I do lovingly say that that season aged me dog years. So that one might have counted for 7. Um, but it was one of the best things I ever did with my life. And I really learned how to be a better teammate um, in a way where I was contributing in a much different way, right? Like, it in the women's game, I was a force of nature, right? Like I was one of the dominant linebackers. Ninji Martin and I led Team USA 2010 in tackles, right? Like I was that person. Um, and going into the men's game, all of a sudden it's like you're scratching and clawing and fighting to make a practice squad roster spot and to get some active games and do all this stuff. Um, and, arena football is notoriously undercoached. It's not like the NFL where you've got 20 coaches, you might have, five. So you don't have the ability to have position breakdowns all the time. And though I was playing running back on the men's side, you know, I'm a linebacker slash speed rusher by trade. So I might be watching from the bench and I'd be like, hey, you know what? Next time, like you took a bad angle on the quarterback. If I'm up in the booth, I'm calling back a naked bootleg and you're gonna get beat on the okey doke the next time. So don't cheat your angle again. And the guys would be like, oh my God, you're so good. Like you're like our little coach on the sidelines. I'm like, yeah, and I don't get hit. Like this is great. I get to take all of this knowledge and put it in your big body. Now go do it. And so it used to be like this running conversation that I was like a player, but also a coach. Because when I wasn't doing it, I could still see it. And the next year, when a new coach came in, Wendell Davis, former Dallas Cowboy, um, he saw how the guys and I were like reacted to each other at an event, right? Like I walked in, they picked me up, tossed me around like a football because relative to them, I N1. And, you know, it caught Wendell's like attention. He's like, who's this girl all my guys love? And one of the other coaches who knew me started laughing and he's like, Coach, that's your running back. And Wendell told me later, he's like, Jen, I knew everything about you, but I assumed that the guys just tolerated you. I never really imagined that they would love you just like any of their guy teammates, right? That it wasn't just some stunt or some weird thing. Like he's like, I saw genuine love and respect. So Wendell sits me down, he starts grilling me about football, what was good, what wasn't, you know, about schemes and all this stuff. And I'm like, look, I've already decided I cannot take getting hit like that again. So, in that moment where you think you're just going to burn the place down, you have nothing to lose other than looking out for your teammates. So I was just brutally honest. Like, they did this well, practice worth this, blah, 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 blah. Here were some things that were good. Like, you want to know why guys aren't playing well? Well, guess what? You say that meals are included. You're paying them $225 a week. And a $5 meal voucher to Arby's isn't cutting it. Like, they're hungry. Like, fix it, right? Like, and and Garrett knows me well enough to know that this is just my DNA. And I was like, and Welter's out, right? Like I tackled everything that needed to be tackled and I feel good about walking out the door because at least I know that these guys who I dearly love will be in a better position than they were before this conversation. And that was the one thing that was in my control. So I leave and the next day, Wendell calls me and he's like, all my defensive coordinator, who's Devin Wyman, and I could talk about is how you have to coach this football team. And I was like, what? No. I was like, what do you mean no? And I was like, oh, no, girls don't coach football. I'm not doing that. And he said, not a lot of guys are going to give you this opportunity. You're taking this job. And I said no. And I hung up on him. And, thankfully, football coaches are very stubborn and we really, really, really don't like the word no. So I think I probably, like, that girl that turns you down for a date, like I probably became more attractive at that moment um, because he called me back the next day and he said, do you remember how I told you not a lot of guys were going to give you this opportunity or taking this job? And I said, yeah. He said, good. I took it for you. You're coaching for me. And by the way, you can't quit, or the entire narrative surrounding women coaching in men's pro football will be we had a girl once and she quit. And I was like, sir, and I am still so thankful to this day for Wendell doing that and seeing something in me before I even saw it in myself. Because I think, especially when you're doing something new and scary or first, you need somebody whose belief maybe gets you over your own negative self talk or like the scariness of the narrative of being first, because it is first. Because it's scary as heck. You don't want to be the one who's then like, oh gosh, yeah, there was a girl once. You don't want to go down that road, right? Like, you don't want to be that person. And, Wendell was certainly that person for me. So that was how I had this transition, and why I say, like, all the women joke that I never retired, but I got stolen by the men's game, because that was really it, from there.
Sure. And obviously football and football coaching is such a fraternity. And so you get that first job, working for Wendell Davis. Obviously he's got the NFL background. And typically, like, NFL coaches hire people that are either referred to them or they know and have worked with. And one of your, one of the probably the pieces that you're most well known for is being the first female coach in the NFL. Talk to us about, like, how did that come to fruition?
So, I think one of the good things about progress is that when it happens, it causes other things to happen. And so when Sarah Thomas was hired as the first female ref in NFL history, a reporter asked Bruce Arians if he could ever see a woman coaching in the NFL. And there are so many things I love about BA, but one of the things that I will say about that man is he is straight truth, no chaser, right? Like, and he just literally said, the second a woman proves that she can make these guys better, she'll be hired. And so I talked to Devin Wyman about it. And he goes, well, we should call Bruce. Can you get me his number? And I was like, what do you- can I get you his number? Don't you guys have like one of these little black books? Like, isn't there a boys club thing? Like, I don't, I don't even know how this could happen. And he was like, yeah, give me his number and I'll talk to him for you. And so, thankfully in indoor football, uh, we would practice before like the guys had to go to their other jobs, right? So we would usually finish practice about 7 in the morning, um, which means it left me with way too much time to think. And so I started wondering if I could, in fact, get Bruce Arians' number. So I called the Cardinals on behalf of myself as if I wasn't myself. That day, I was certainly not the assistant coach. I was the assistant to the head coach. And my head coach wanted to talk to their head coach because he'd heard about what he said about a woman coaching in the NFL. And though it was not the NFL, there was already a woman coaching in men's pro football. Now, I was apparently very convincing, because I worked my way all the way to Bruce's assistant, who is, you know, who has gone on to do wonderful things. It's funny how the world works, Garrett. He is now the defense coordinator at Clemson. Wesley Godwin, like, I always said how brilliant he was, but Wesley was like, I think BA would really want to take this call, but we're a little busy. It was like weeks before the draft, right? Like, for those of you who have watched Draft Day, let me just tell you something. The cheat code is none of that stuff is happening. The funeral on the field, etc., that does not exist before draft. The only thing that matters is football. So he very kindly blew me off. And so I really thought that that was the end of the conversation. I was really proud of myself for having the guts to call the Cardinals, but in no way did I think that this door had now become open to coaching in the NFL. Um, and then a few weeks later, and at that point, Garrett, like, Wendell had left, like the team was very like was going through it. And Wendell had left. So he's the one who brought me in. But Devin was now the head coach. He had kept me. And Devin gets a call from Bruce Arians. And he said, tell me about this girl. And so apparently Devin was very convincing, because then it was a matter of he eventually brought me out to OTAs and, um, you know, he told me a story about one of the best college coaches he was ever around, um, was a college receivers coach, and her name was Dot Murphy. And he said, the fact that it's been no different in all of this time, like, somebody has to make that change. And he said, I don't even know if I can do it. But I want you to know it's in my heart to try. And so it was really Bruce Arians and him being the man that he is and really leading by example and always having been committed to, you know, making sure that his coaching staffs were a mix of knowledge, right? He liked to get different opinions on his staff. So he made sure that everything was heard. And I think, he followed through on his offensive philosophy, which if you guys are Bruce Arians, fans, it's no risk it, no biscuit. And I would have to say that he risked it. And I certainly hope we got the biscuit.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's a great story, great journey. And as you noted, and I grew up the son of a college NFL football coach, so I have great admiration for coaches, and put a lot of weight in what coaches do for a program, for society, for culture. Um, and especially as I look now towards, football is changing. You've got flag football that's going to be in the Olympics now, which is tremendous. And you see so many more young girls having a chance to play flag football and participate. And I've got to believe that having great female coaches who can be role models, and can inspire and energize, right, young girls to want to play flag. Um, I, I think that's got to be, truly an important step for as we look to say, and I think you had brought it up earlier, whereas like, up until today, or, up until a couple of years ago, football was only available to 50% of society. Well, now with flag football, it's 100%. If you want to play flag football, your boy or girl, you have a chance to do that. But I would also argue, like, as I look at like basketball and women's basketball, one of the mistakes that, you look back and, hey, it's hindsight, but one of the mistakes that women's basketball maybe made was way too many male coaches leading women's basketball. Right now, with flag football being a really new sport, there's this opportunity to say we need more female coaches leading girls flag football, because that's only going to grow the sport. It's going to create a better ecosystem, because now it's not just the girls that can play. Oh, they can also coach. And then it's just going to continue to hopefully grow and, grow over time. Whereas like I have young daughters. I want them to not only have a chance to play, but then to see somebody like yourself that can coach. Maybe talk about, that the next evolution or the next phase of football and what you're doing with girls flag football, girls football.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly hope that we always get a compliment in sports of knowledge and mentorship, right? Like I I am the person that I am because of, you know, all of the sports that have been in my life and football in particular, right? And so for me, it's so important that a little girl could see a bigger future through the game of football and maybe in pieces through my journey and through some of the other really rock star women that are in football to say I could be her, right? Because I instinctively turned down my first coaching role because girls didn't do that, right? So we want to open minds, open hearts, and open doors in how we show up and how we demonstrate what progress looks like, right? Like I always say this, we can't tell a girl she can be anything in this world and, she's the same as the boys when we don't give the girls the same resources as the boys and we don't show them in the same way, right? Remember when, I mean, I think, we've done a great job of evolving even sports media coverage around women's sports, but it used to be for a very long time that only 3 to 4% of media coverage went to women in sports. And we can look at the rise of the NWSL and, the WNBA and even Unrivaled, right? And like these great college rivalries that have increased that media coverage. But as a female athlete, there was always this friction between what we said and what girls were shown, right? Like I would tell you any girl should go back to the press conference when I was hired by the Arizona Cardinals. And I said, we show girls all the wrong ways to be successful, right? We teach them to, be pretty merry well and act badly. And that's what we see on TV through, kind of this reality show genre that really isn't the reality for most of us. And it's certainly not aspirational in terms of, you know, what you can do and who you can be when your body is not, it's not an asset to someone else's life. It's an instrument to your own success, right? Like, and that's what we can change through intentionally showcasing athletes like Alona Mayer, right? Who's so good on her body positivity, and she's in a real tackle sport, right? Like, and we can expose girls to that as opposed to something else, right? And you want to be able to guide the girls with people who have been there, done that, right? Like, and I founded Gridiron Girls early in the flag football evolution, right? I founded that in 2017. And
And Jen, explain what is Gridiron Girls, just so everybody understands.
so Gridiron Girls, I say it's confidence through football and teaching the girls there's no game they cannot play and no field they do not belong in or on. It's my nonprofit, and we've done to date 68 girls flag camps. Um, and really, a lot of the top girls in the game, whether or not they started with the Gridiron Girls program, I lovingly say that they're like, you know, they're an NEFFL elite player and a Gridiron Girl, right? Or they're Sig Giants and a Gridiron Girl, or an Athena Warriors and a Gridiron Girl, because we partnered with organizations that wanted to grow their their footprint in flag and attract more girls to the game. And kind of, I would be the sizzle and then they would be the substance, right? I'm not competing with you for your girls in league play, et cetera, but I want to help you on that journey with that positive messaging, positive female role modelship, and obviously the fundamentals of football. And so um, it's been probably one of my favorite things that I've done in this lifetime was taking girls and really, showing them that they weren't wrong for loving football, that they weren't the only one who loved football. And in the early days, boy, oh boy, to get 100 girls out there like it hadn't been seen before, or, going into markets where they still hadn't figured out that flag was different than football, and really being intentional about making sure that every girl who left our field could step into any game, right? She could go play street ball. She could play with her family at Thanksgiving. She could go in and play, you know, in class if they were doing it, or she would have the resources to go into what was called a co-ed camp at that time. It wasn't really co-ed because you'd have a camp of 200 with 2 to 4 girls, which meant 1 to 2%. And so those girls were outliers, and they were often fundamentally behind because they weren't socialized into the game the same way the boys were. So then you go into what's supposed to be co-ed, and they say things like, you throw like a girl, you catch like a girl, which isn't actually a thing. It just means you've either been coached or you haven't. And so, um, for me, it was to be able to be out there and be that positive role model who looked the game in the face and said, how many of you have been told that girls don't play football or that you can't do stuff because you're a girl? Facilitate those conversations, and at the same time, give the resources to overcome those objections, and start to develop what felt like a community in a game that hadn't yet had a place for us. And now, I mean, probably one of the coolest evolutions in sport, and definitely the coolest evolution in my lifetime has been, that now girls can dream football and they can play their way to an education or to better future in football like so many generations of boys have.
Sure. And you hit it about participation and we're on sponsorable show is about the business of grassroots sports, and part of the business side is building and growing participation across sport. And as I look at other sports like soccer, and I say and traditionally I'm a football guy, but I say, man, soccer has done it so well for so many years, and they've really figured out the model. Whereas all these other sports, I'm not convinced. Especially like tackle football, youth tackle football. I think they really struggle. I'm looking at flag thinking, man, that they're making a lot of the same mistakes that youth tackle football made. And that is, to your point, it's, hey, we're going to do a co-ed league. And that's what's good. And it's not because it's really what's good for the girls side. It's because they can't figure out how to get more girls into like the girls division of flag. And so, like, to me, I'm like, man, that it really is going to stall out the growth, because at some point girls are just going to see flag football as well. That's really it's co-ed, but it really is a boys sport. And that will be a shame. And we probably only have, a couple year window here, as the sport is so new, to really imprint that and say, no, there is a boys division, there is a girls division, and you can play. Like my daughters, they stopped wanting to play flag because, to your point, they were on a team and it was one girl and 9 boys. And it's like, I thought this was supposed to be girls, girls flag. And so, like, to me, it's like, man, like soccer's figured it out. And yes, early days in soccer or early years in soccer, they do have co-ed. But then at some point, like 7 years old and older, they bridge the teams into boys division, girls division, and they go. And I gotta believe getting more female coaches into flag football, whether it's moms or whether it's great coaches like yourself who can then be role models for young girls. And that, to me, like I know my daughters would say, yes, I want to go play for a female coach, as opposed to, I'm going to go play for a dad who's an accountant who probably doesn't know a whole lot about football anyway. And so, like, it's at some point it's not going to have the same fun factor that it would be to go and play with a all girls team led by a female coach. And that's one part where I'm like, man, we need more organizations like Gridiron Girls, because I look at your camps as being, man, it's like open houses for kids to learn how to learn about flag football, and for parents to say, hey, well, my daughter has an interest in playing flag. This camp is not only going to give her exposure to it, but it's going to teach her the fundamentals and the skills, to your point, then to go on and take those with her to what's next in her sports career. And like, that's where it's like, man, how do we get, and I'm sure that it's, like, we need more corporate dollars, NFL team dollars, saying, okay, how are we building more access to and opportunity, quite frankly, young girls to participate in flag football.
Look, if I could make a perfect world, Garrett, I would. And this is literally me because my friends, and you know this because you've known me a long time, like I love an adventure. I would probably wrap a wrap a mobile home and go to every city and run a camp there and get as many girls past that mental state of football is for boys. And why I say this is, look, like, I know I can change a girl's life when I get her on my field. I know I can, right? Just even through positive intentional coaching, right? You're not just getting a football coach, you're getting someone who's broken a lot of barriers, someone who has a PhD in psychology, and someone who can give you all the fundamentals, right? I know I can change a girl's life when I get her on my field. I'm going to give her the power to say, yes, I like this sport, or no, I don't, because no one else is going to say you can't do it because you're a girl. You've seen it, you know it, whether or not you choose to do it. Well, that's anybody's game, right? Like, I mean, hey, if you learned it all and that's not your sport, that's one thing. But somebody else doesn't get to make that decision for you. I would get on a bus and I would go to as many places in the world and teach these girls. And, one of the things we did with Gridiron Girls that I'm still really proud of is that we opened up the coaching as well. I said I wanted to get the best women and men in the game of football together for the good of girls, period. So, we had former NFL players, women's tackle football players, women's flag players, even, amazing women athletes from other sports who are like, I want to come help. Like Kendall Coyne came out and helped and coached. And she's like, I'm not really a football person. I was like, listen, you are an amazing woman, and I will have you as a rock star on one drill before these girls get here. And I just want them to get to meet you, right? Like, there's a way that everybody can be a hero on the football field when you act in intention, right? If a brand really wanted to change the game like that, then good. Take take women like me and put us on the field. And then, oh, by the way, one of the things we've done um, throughout the history of Gridiron Girls is, I might get coaches who are like, hey, like we did a big camp in Chicago not too long ago, and I want to say 7 women reached out and they were like, "Hey, Coach Jen, can I just come and watch your Gridiron Girls camp? Because I'm going to coach next season and I'm not confident." And I'm like, "Look, you can come, but you can't watch. You got to coach because at some point you got to coach. And I would rather you're on the field with me. You learn some of the ways I teach things, even hear the way I talk about things and approach them. And, that, you just got to jump in the cold water at some point, and better that you do it here at a camp when you're not by yourself. Then all of a sudden you've got all these girls looking at you and you're like, oh my gosh, I've never coached before. Right. So the intention to get more women as coaches can start with, increasing opportunities where we do clinics and take the, you know rip the band-aid off, right? Like, you're scared of the game, well, great. A lot of people were scared of the game at one point or another. And I frankly have zero doubts that I can coach anybody at any level. I have coached in Mexico, I've coached in Australia, I've coached in China, I've coached everything from the idiot bit little babies, right? Like Kaylee Patterson started with me at 4 years old. That girl will take over the world in flag football. I could not be more proud, right? She just rocked her high school team, MVP, all this stuff. And she started with me at 4. She just turned like 13. That girl will see the world differently. And football was in her, but her parents will say to this day that she saw herself around other girls and everything changed that day at 4, right? And she's probably been to, I don't any Gridiron Girls camp that her parents could drive her to, she's been there, right? And so there's this magic window that we can create for women, for girls through this sport that is bigger than just whether or not they want to play it, right? Like, when you take some area in the world that's always been off limits and you make it doable, you show them that they can do other things. And that has always been the magic of Gridiron Girls, right? Like, you're scared of it? Great. Come do it with me. I'll make you feel like $1,000,000 before you leave the field, because everything is going to be about a win. Period. Um, but yes, we need more corporate dollars. We need, especially in communities where, the beauty of Gridiron Girls, I think I would say most of the camps that I've done, um, or at least 60 of those camps have been free. Um, I think, maybe going back to the really early days, we took donations. So they were pretty much free, but if somebody could give us, like, some money towards this movement, they did. And then, we just did a camp with the University of Maryland, and that one had a small charge to it. But to for me, I would much rather be able to give like a free camp in the community for a girl who might otherwise be left behind by the sport than to have so many girls not be able to, you know, cross that being able to pay barrier. Because one of the stats that we know about sports, and going back to what you said about sponsored, is when families have a limited budget um, to be allocated to sports participation, and they have a boy and they have a girl, it's more likely to go to the boys because it's viewed often as being more likely that he will get an education from it, or it'll have ROI at the end. And so to really change the game for girls, we have to make not only the skill acquisition and the mentorship accessible, but the price point accessible as well.
Sure. And so if you like, or if you like today's episode, make sure you like and subscribe so we can continue to get great guests like Dr. Jen Welter onto the show. So especially when you think about, and you make up a great point about the ROI, and as parents, you're looking at, hey, at some point, my children, I'm going to invest in sports that they have a future for. I think that the really great news for flag football is that more and more, especially girls, there is a future to playing collegiate flag football. I do think with the Olympics, or with flag now part of the Olympics, colleges and just the entire nation now is more aware of that. The NFL has been doing a great job spotlighting that. I got to believe that this upcoming football season, they are really going to be pouring on the PR and the spotlight to showcase that throughout the course of the season and through all the NFL media channels. But at the collegiate game, right? When we look at girls flag football, maybe talk about like where is that right now in the space?
I was just talking to um the football foundation, right? And I think we're up to 104 schools now um that have either a program going into 2026 or are looking to and have committed to 2027. Um, you had the first D1 HBCU in ASU start a program, which is a huge milestone. You have NCAA Division Two, which will be launching next year. So it's only going to continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And you know the the ability to come in as a good athlete and maybe you know, maybe take what you've applied in something else and put it into flag and to open a door to education and beyond, I think we're in that time period right now where early investment in the sport and participation, um, you know, will allow for real leadership to develop in college and beyond. And so, um, I think unlike, you mentioned the grassroots efforts of soccer. I love it, but you'll hear parents say if my daughter's not in by X age, it's too late, right? And I don't know if it's ever too late when you're the right athlete. Like I don't necessarily buy in quite to that, but there is such a steep learning curve in some of those very, very established sports that it can be very intimidating to step onto that field. So whether or not from a skill perspective you could make it up, sports psychology wise, I go 10,000 hours, I go, you could, but would you be willing to, from a confidence perspective, step into something where everybody else is so advanced, right? I think there's a little bit of that. In flag, not the case, right? In flag, we're still looking at, other than the outliers of some of your girls who have been playing for a very long time. And I love that I've mentored them because they're always going to be the best. So I'm going to be like, got her, right? Like, yep, those are my little minions. Like for those of you who know me, like I don't have kids of my own. Those are my, everyone I've ever coached are like my guys and my girls, right? And I get to see their success and just find so much joy in it. But it's still the outlier that girls are playing that early and developing that fluidity of movement pattern. So it's still a sport with so much opportunity to start now and grow with the game as it grows. right? Like other sports you kind of know where that ceiling is, but schools are going to continue to add flag football. It's a great Title IX equalizer. It's an inexpensive sport, and the roster size is relatively small. So, I realized it in 2017 when I was the head coach of the first Australian women's national team. Um, and I saw how difficult and how expensive it was to get tackle football equipment. Um, and how most of those girls were wearing their boyfriend's pads, right? So you have these pads that could fit three of you in them, and how prohibitive that expense was. I all of the sudden went, the global game is flag because all you need is a ball. And it that's what made it so clear for me, and that's also why it was Gridiron Girls for me, is because at that time they would call football gridiron. So, um, it just became so clear that this blue ocean, blue sky sport that, most people had yet to even realize what that upside potential could be.
Agreed. I still remember 2012. I was sitting with Carl Peterson, one of the great NFL GMs. At the time, he was the chairman of USA Football, and we were talking about where's the future of football, and we both thought it was actually at the time we I felt it was girls tackle because I'd come off of watching you guys play. I said, man, like the girls tackle is a untapped market, untapped opportunity. And but we also talked about flag and what a huge opportunity flag was because exactly what you said, the global game. The fact that anybody across the world can play flag football. It because it doesn't take a whole lot of money, right? It takes you get a football and flag belt, and that's really it. And you watch other countries, especially in international flag competition, and I would say they're just as advanced, if not more advanced, than the United States. So although tackle football is a U.S. like that's our sport, flag, I'm not sold that we don't have the market cornered when it comes to flag football, and I think it shows year in year out when you see the world championships and you see U.S. doesn't win every world championship when it comes to flag football. I think it's a battle every single year, and that's what actually will be great about the Olympics. It's not going to be pure domination. It's going to be, hopefully, really competitive games. So,
Oh, I think absolutely. And, I think it's going into the Olympics and seeing these competitions continue to get better and better in different countries, you know, really starting to invest resources into the development of the game, just make it that much more compelling, um, which I love. But I also, going back to tackle, I also I will always hold in my heart that um there there is still some real potential in, tackle football. And I think that one of the cool things is that, you know, even on the trajectory of boys playing tackle football, we've said start with flag, right? Learn the fundamentals of the game and build into tackle. And as you get these young girls who are also learning, you know, the fundamentals of the game and growing up with the fluidity and all of those things, then they get to progress in their athletic journey. And I hope that flag also, and tackle also continue to develop so that then they get to say, oh, you know what? Like, I play both, or maybe, maybe I just always wanted to tackle like I did, right? Like I I have a love for flag, especially from the accessibility and development perspective, but you will never tell me I don't love tackle football. Like I am a tackle football gal. I still, I most recently coached in the XFL. So um I my heart is in both for different reasons.
sure. And as you look at, obviously, you're deeply ingrained in the world of both flag and tackle. But as you look at kind of girls flag football and organizations across the U.S., are there any out there that you hey, these guys are doing a really good job progressing, evolving the girls' flag side.
Oh gosh, there are so many. I mean, you can't not shout out the Ottawa football legacy dynasty that is, Liz and Katie Sowers. They've done such a great job with that. And, having been Team USA teammates in 2013 and like long time competing against each other, because they were Kansas City and rivals, right? Like, and Kansas City and I was Dallas, so big rivalry. Um I always said I had to be a better football player when I went against Liz and Katie, right? Like those were two of the icons of the tackle space. And obviously, they have continued to move the football journey forward. So I have to give a shout out there. Like they've done a really good job. I think you see the upswing of Kaiser has done a really good job in their program. They're one to watch in terms of the collegiate level. They have some real talent there. They've done a good job in recruiting. Nevada State, Nevada is developing a new program, and they have pulled like, Rudy and Coach Todd, who have developed the Apex Predators out of Vegas, which have been a dominant force in football for a long time. You've got the Sig Giants, right? Like Coach Big Mike has been one of the outstanding personalities in football for a very long time, and those girls play their hearts out for them. Athena out of Philly has done a great job. There's a great group out of Jacksonville that does a great job. NEFFL Elite has done a wonderful job. That's where like Soph has come out of and Kaylee Patterson has come out of, and a lot of young athletes. New York Playmakers has McKinsey, another great one. There's a couple good groups out of Arizona, like the Tucson Turf, Southern Cal, like Ryan Bertoni has done a really outstanding job. They started at Matt Leinert's league, and they have just exploded Southern California. I've had the pleasure of working with them for a long time. So, and then I think you're going to see, um, you know, San Francisco is starting, like California is really starting to pick up in the flag market. So I think we're going to continue to see that. And then I'm not as familiar with the programs down in Georgia, but there are some real ballers there. And the Atlanta Falcons have led not only the building of Georgia, but they've progressed into other states as well, like into Alabama. So they're really leading the space. And then Chicago, up in Chicago, the Bears have really, really committed. Gus, who runs the program up there, is outstanding. We launched their girls program in Hallis Hall. I will say that was a like moment for me. And, they've not only, been hitting the ground and really moving like CPS forward, but also like over in England and Spain as well. So just some really, really dedicated people with their hearts in the right place who continue you know, to drive the sport. And a lot of them like have come out of family love of the game, right? Like Athena Athletics is Katie and Tim Quinn, and their daughters now play and are in college and have come through. They have four girls, so of course they were going to develop girls flag football, but they've worked with the Eagles and stuff like that. So there's just some really good ones. Oh, and I can't forget the Texas Fury because they are one of the iconic ones as well. But I mean, there's so many good ones that I could keep going, and at the same time, knowing that those are some really good, and 32 Sports doing some great stuff out of Connecticut. But and then Lois Cook, I gotta shout out. She's doing some great work out in DC. Um, People know her as Cleats and Stilettos, but one of the really like she's just a gem and one of my best friends, right? Like um you see this great love of the game being played forward by some really good people, and yet, when I talk about like blue ocean or blue sky, the fact that I could rattle off so many organizations and know that there's so much more room for growth is where, we as people who are committed to the space have to find the resources to be able to support the groups who have not yet gotten that formula together so that they continue to grow.
Sure. And I look at it in a couple of different ways. Obviously, to your point, there were a lot of different organizations that you had just mentioned, and a lot of different levels. And especially as I look too at what the NFL is going to be doing, with right there, at some point they're going to roll out, you know, whether you call it a developmental league or a professional league, right? There's going to be a flag professional league, and it's going to be run by the NFL and the NFL teams. And it's going to be great for men and women side of the sport, but it's also going to drive down into the, to the academy level, or the more of the youth level. You look at what MLS has done, and it's probably something similar, right? Where it's MLS academies, or the team academies rather, which is, I think it's great, because still, in my opinion, the worst thing or one of the challenges that you'd hope the sport doesn't take the same tact as maybe they did early is, well, hey, this guy's a tackle football coach. He can coach flag. And that's where I think the culture of flag football is very different than the culture of tackle football. And the strategy, and I think there's some things that do cross over, but like flag football, in my opinion, needs to be its own sport. Needs to be led by coaches that certainly understand the strategy side, but then are going to drive the culture side. And I think it's ultimately it's going to be a challenge probably for all to say, how do we get more coaches into this brand new sport? Because to your point, it's exploding. The worst thing is putting bad coaches in place, because bad coaches are just going to be a detractor, and really impede kids from wanting to play. I think all the studies will show, hey, the reason why kids drop out of sport is because it's like 70% of kids drop out of sport, and it has something to do with their coaches or their coach, and the impact or the negative impact typically the coaches had on them.
Well, and what I would say is, it's so interesting because when you talk about a bad coach, most people assume that that means that they weren't this football mastermind. It's not, especially at the youth sports level. It's how do the kids feel, right? Like, even, I tell any of my coaches at a camp, football is a very complex game. I'm still learning football. Every football coach I'm around, like, people assume I walk in and I profess to know all the answers. And I ask questions. I'm like, okay, what are you doing here? How do you see this? Why are you doing this? Because I think that's how we get better. And I think that's how we're complemented. Football is a game you can learn your whole life, right? Like, maybe it's one route running technique, or I love to do this against here, or I use motion to show me this, or, hey, here's a cheat code here, right? Like, if you're a football coach and you're into the game, like, there's endless ways you can go down the rabbit hole. Bad coaches, right? Like, the ones that we're talking about now, it's not that you don't know all of those answers. You should just have all of those questions, right? As a coach, want to be a lifelong learner. It's the energy that you set with players and the way that you communicate in order to leave a kid feeling that they wanna come back or not, right? Like, and my business, gosh, this makes me feel old. Before I coached was, um, coaching ath coaching coaches on coach-athlete relationships and feedback. Um, that's one of my areas of expertise, and one of my doctoral projects was, parenting your child athlete, and how do you how do you really create um, settings for success that's bigger than, X's and O's, and that's bigger than wins and losses, right? Like, because ultimately, what we want is the kid wants to, kid makes a bad play, but they're ready to go back at it the next play. Kid loses a game and still wants to come back the next day, and also knows the difference between winning or losing, because that that setting isn't everyone gets a trophy. That's a misnomer. That the research doesn't even show that that's the difference. But, certain even like word patterns or word choices can make the difference of whether or not a kid feels that they can, pardon the pun, but like tackle football and tackle life. And so, you know, surrounding coaches, especially young ones, with the confidence to know that on certain things, there's not a right or wrong answer, right? Like bad play call, who cares? We all make them. The best coaches, you know, in NFL football, college football, whatever, they still make play calls they regret. That's okay. But how does the kid feel coming out of that? And do they want to take the next rep? That's the difference.
Hmm. Well, Jen, once again, this has been a tremendous podcast for me. It's great to reconnect. It reminds me that, one, I probably have to have you back on the show, but two, we definitely have to reconnect and catch up on how life's going and business. If folks that are listening want to get in touch with you, what's the best way that they can reach you or engage with you?
Yeah, on social, it's Welter47 or Gridiron Girls with 3 R's. It's like "gur" because I was so aggravated that girls didn't have opportunities, so that's where the extra R's come through. And if you see the logo, here's the cheat code. It's also fingernails through a football because I was like, "Ur," and I was grabbing a ball one day and I was like, "Oh, that's really cool." So I drew it myself. Um, and then on LinkedIn, it's Welter47 as well. I'm really active on LinkedIn. It is, to me, it's a place where we can balance social activity and intellect and business. So that is one of mine. And then my website is jenwelter.com. Really simple. Look, last name and football number, the athlete cheat code, and, full name. And it is like a welterweight in boxing, which is hilarious, Garrett, because you know me, which means I'm not even heavy enough for my own weight class, right? Like, that is God's irony in a name.
Well, hey, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for being on Sponsorable, and until next time.
Anytime.
All right.